let's say you decide that your emotions are something that can impact your trading performance, and you know that if you get to a level of 8 out of 10 frustration, your performance goes to pieces. Maybe your process goal would be, if I hit, say, 8 out of 10 on the frustration level, I step away from the desk, the computer, I go and take a walk, and I come back and reassess my emotion level. That's a process goal.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, so we have Créde Sheehy-Kelly with us today. This is actually our inaugural Simcast, as it were. So Tradingsim podcast or interview. So hoping to make a habit out of this and bring on some really special guests like Créde. And Créde and I met, I guess, about a year ago, right? And just since then have kind of kept in touch and haven't had a chance to work with each other until more recently because you had the big move from Ireland and the new baby. So congratulations on that. But just wanted to introduce you. Yeah. And tell us a little bit about yourself. You know, what's your background?
Sure. So, well, first off, thanks for having me here. And I feel very honored to be on the first episode. So delighted to be here. So I'm a high performance psychologist. And for anyone that is not familiar with that term, it's someone who works with people in high performance domains to help them improve their performance by working on their mindset and their emotions, or their emotional regulation. So not to be confused with a clinical psychologist, because sometimes people get a bit freaked out when they think of working with a psychologist. So clinical psychologists work with people who are experiencing trauma or mental illness, and performance psychologists work with people who are looking to level up their performance. So a bit of a distinction between the two. And I guess I'll just tell you a little bit about my journey and how I came into trading. So my professional background is actually in sports psychology. So I've worked with a lot of high performance and professional athletes for years, from lots of different sports. So rugby, soccer, swimming, all across the board. And I also then, the science of performance psychology is the same applied in any domain. So what works in sport also works in other performance domains where people are under a lot of pressure and they have to perform. So I then expanded my coaching into working with people from business, fighter pilots, doctors, even an opera singer, actually, which is really interesting. So it's a very wide range of people that I've worked with. And I got into trading then almost by just chance, when a trader who had already made the connection between the mindset required for professional athletes and the mindset required for trading. So he'd already kind of clicked that, and he approached me for coaching, and we worked together. And there was such a really strong link between the mindset required in high performance sport and in trading that I was hooked. It was really interesting to me and really fascinating. So we worked together, got great results. And then I took a trading course, just an introduction, just to understand the basics from a technical perspective, so that I could better apply my knowledge on the performance psychology side of things in the trading realm. And so I've been working with traders ever since, one-to-one coaching, webinars, group coaching for about 3 years now.
Oh, that's fantastic. So I'm curious, before we dive into any kind of specific questions, like what got you interested in doing sports psychology? Or just performance psychology? Are you an athlete, or were you an athlete yourself?
No, I wasn't. I mean, I loved sports. I always played it, and I loved it. And I worked in sports related jobs, like even through college, lifeguarding and various different things like that. So I always had a love of it. I also am extremely competitive and faced my own challenges in hockey, so field hockey, that I never quite nailed at the time. I didn't even know about sports psychology, so I wish I had. So I had that experience of being frustrated by, I suppose, mental challenges in sports. And then I have a real passion for psychology and understanding people. And that's what I bring. So I'll be really upfront, like, I don't trade, I'm not a trader, but I bring a really deep knowledge of people and performance psychology and just how people work to the market. And so when I work with people, traders, they're bringing their technical expertise and knowledge to the table, and we work together in a collaboration.
That's fantastic. So that kind of raises a question in my mind then. who is it that comes to you? I mean, if you can think back on the type of clients that you've helped along the way, whether it's an opera singer or a fighter pilot, which I think is absolutely crazy, but kind of cool, like, or just a sports guy or a trader, like who is it that comes to you? Like, where are they along the path? Are they somebody that's like just starting out? Is it somebody who's kind of like struggling, they plateaued? Like where do they fit into that process and coming to find you?
So the people that I work with now are definitely people who are striving to be at the top of their game, or are already there and are, wanting to stay there and kind of really push up their performance and level up. Performance psychology is relevant to anybody. So I have worked with children, I've worked with amateur athletes, but I just find that my kind of love and specialization is really with people who are at that cutting edge of performance and who are highly motivated and driven and willing to do whatever it takes to succeed. So that's not to say you have to be, an elite trader who's making a living from it to work with me. It's not that. If that's a goal for them, then this is, for you. And so in terms of the clients that I've worked with in sports, like I've worked with professional people who have contracts, professional rugby players who already have contracts and they're trying to, iron out some challenges on the mental side of it, or just people who are already doing well, but they feel that there's more to gain by working on the mental and emotional side of their performance. So they see that by doing that, they can get even more results. So it's really people who are driven under pressure in terms of their profession, and they have to have an ability to deal with high levels of pressure and, make quick decisions that are effective.
So it sounds to me like then it's kind of a mixed bag that comes to you. You've got those who maybe are looking for to take their trading to the next level. Perhaps you've got those who haven't quite made it to where they expect to be. But the one thing that seems like that, or the one thread that seems to kind of run through your clients would be like that motivation to succeed. Like obviously they're looking to come to you for, and there's some kind of investment there that they're wanting to make in their future and their performance, the amount of time and money and effort that it takes to get better. So would you say that's that motivation is kind of like the underlying factor?
Yeah, and it's really helpful that you've said that, because it actually draws a distinction. Sometimes there's a misconception about performance psychologists, and people think that they're motivational speakers, and there are some that are motivational speakers, but it's actually quite different. So people who come to me are already seriously motivated. They may be experiencing a dip in motivation, which is normal, on any journey to trying to reach the peak. You go up and down in terms of motivation, discipline, etc. But basically they are really hungry for success and they are willing to put in the work to achieve it. Those are the people that are coming to me. I think when people do motivational speaking, sometimes they're speaking to people who would like to be more motivated, or maybe they're speaking to teams in businesses where not everybody's on the same level of kind of hunger for success. So there's quite a distinction, at least in terms of what I do. I'm working with people who are highly driven and motivated.
That's interesting then. So you would say then that those who come to you, or those who are driven to succeed, have kind of like that underlying motivation already. Do you have anything in your playbook as a sports coach or a high performance coach, psychologist, that fosters motivation? Or is it something like you kind of have to have that already, and then you've got something there that they can maybe incrementally get better and apply to what they're already doing? How does that work?
I think the best way of describing it is to say that the people who come to me have a goal. So, they have mapped out in their heads that they have some target that they want to achieve. So whether that is they eventually want to become, they want to leave their job and they want to trade full time and make a living from it. Or with a professional athlete, maybe they want to make the first team on a consistent basis, or maybe they want to win the championship, or maybe they've won it 3 years in a row and they need to keep it up, So people have a goal, but their levels of motivation can absolutely dip, especially say in sport, when people suffer an injury, their motivation really drops, and that's understandable. So definitely we have practical techniques to help people build back up that motivation. But usually at some point in time, they are highly motivated and they set this goal for themselves, and then they start on that journey, and that brings lots of challenges. And, so performance psychologists can help along the way. In terms of concrete strategies, one thing that's really effective to build motivation is goal setting. So sometimes people get overwhelmed, they're trying to do too much all at the same time, and then they don't see results, and that can be really demotivating. So it knocks their confidence, and they slip into a sort of a trough, and they find it hard to pull themselves out. So sometimes something simple like just really stripping it back, setting a few simple, straightforward goals that help them to start experiencing good results again, can get them back on track. So that would be a practical way of building up motivation, would be to kind of clear the overwhelm, bring it back to basics, set a few clear goals, see success, and then build on that.
So that's what you do then. You take someone who is motivated and driven to succeed, and would it be fair to say that you apply structure to that? For example, like goal setting. And, goal setting, I guess in itself can have kind of like tiers. Like you've got maybe the national championship way up here, but am I hearing you say that you kind of open up the door to like structural process goals within that they may not see, like a trader may not be aware of what needs to be done to get to that goal of whatever it is. Maybe it's consistent profitability, $1 million, whatever that is. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, exactly. So, and goal setting, or effective goal setting, is actually one of the cornerstones of performance psychology. It's, I don't think I've ever worked with someone and not done goal setting with them. Even if they have goals in their mind, there's always a way to tweak them, improve them. So for somebody who has that big goal, absolutely, you need to create a framework so that they're not focused on that big goal all the time, because it's useful to have it as a guide, like that's the direction you want to go and you want to achieve that. But if you're focused on your goal of becoming, leaving your job and making your income from trading while you're in the middle of a trade, that's only going to enhance your panic, anxiety, so that's not useful. So that goal has a time and place where you're considering it. But then what we do is we work backwards until we get to process goals. So this is something I talk a lot about: process, performance, and outcome goals. So process goals are the things that you do, the small things that you do all the time that help you to eventually reach that bigger goal. Performance goals as well are something that you can focus on when you're in a trade or in your trade review. And often most traders that I work with have challenges around detaching from the P&L. So if they're too focused on the money, obviously that's going to really impact your emotions. So if you have a trade that goes against you, you lose money. If people are very attached to that, they feel like they've made a mistake and it's playing on them, and they're thinking of the money they lost, the likelihood is that they might then, the next step that they take will be something that will undermine their trading performance. So they could revenge trade, or maybe they're taking too many trades, or whatever it is. So it's really about helping people to get right down to a process focus, so that when they're in the market, in a trade, they're paying attention to the right things that are going to set them up for success.
So process, performance, outcome, those are kind of like your three keys there. Yeah.
I can explain that just really quickly if you want. So an outcome goal is something that would, you can't completely control it. So in sport, that would be winning a championship. You can do everything you can to try and make that happen. But sometimes
you don't want to focus on that though, do you? Or do you?
No, but you do need to have it. So if you haven't set your outcome goals, so say getting funded, so in trading, so working for a prop firm, it's something you can work towards, but it is an outcome goal, like, because it depends on somebody taking you on, it depends on making a certain amount of money, etc. And sometimes, say, market conditions, there's things that can go against you in that goal. So you set it as that's the vision that you're working towards, but then you need to set goals that are completely within your control within that framework in order to allow you to be successful and to move forward. So let's say, I'll just give a practical example. So if somebody maybe finds that they're over trading, they're taking too many trades and then, they've got fear of missing out, they're jumping into every trade, whatever. So they might set a goal around 90% of all the trades they take have to fit their A+ setup criteria, potentially. That's a performance goal. So that's completely within their control. They are taking those trades, therefore they can decide to take their A+ setup or not. And that's something that they can track over time. And if they do that, that will help them to reach their ultimate vision. But it's something that's much more tangible, measurable in the day-to-day sense. And then even pulling back from that further, a process goal is something, again, that's within your control. But that might be that you, let's say you decide that your emotions are something that can impact your trading performance. And you know that if you get to a level of 8 out of 10 frustration, your performance goes to pieces. Maybe your process goal would be, if I hit, say, 8 out of 10 on the frustration level, I step away from the desk, the computer, I go and take a walk, and I come back and reassess my emotion level. That's a process goal.
Interesting. Yeah, I like that. Would you say then, kind of starting from the ground up, as far as like process, would that be centered around like entry criteria as well? Like specific like entry criteria, like if this and this happens, then I enter the trade with this amount of money, this risk, and maybe like a target of here or something like that. Would that be a process goal as well, or is that more of a technical type thing?
So it would, as in, I wouldn't be setting those type of goals with people because I'm not coming with the technical expertise to work with people to tell them what to do in that sense. But it technically would be a process goal. So, but you'd probably turn it into something more simple so that you could rate it all the time. So you would have done all of that thinking around what a good entry looks like, and you would have that mapped out in good detail. And then you might rate your entries, out of 10. And you probably have worked out a structure around all the different criteria that go into a good entry. And then you would distill that down into, right, I have a way of turning that into measuring my good entry out of 10, so that it becomes something a bit simpler, because it's really important with performance psychology that we don't overload people as well. There's a lot to be working on from a technical perspective. You don't want the performance psychology aspect of things to add a whole load more analysis, a load more reviewing, a load more work, So it wouldn't be practical if we were to implement a strategy that somebody had to do 5 minutes of psychology things before they were ever going to take their trade once they'd seen their setup. Like, that's just not practical. So it's a balance of taking what people are doing on a technical side of things and then distilling it into a simple psychology kind of process goal, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. That's kind of neat. I was thinking about that after one of our conversations, is like having kind of like a thermometer, so to speak, of like, where am I on the emotional scale, on the frustration scale? And there are other psychologists I've read, books, just for I guess the purpose of having something tangible to compare like your frustration to confidence level and where you are in that. And so those are kind of like, I guess we would say they're more tangible things. They're things that, like you said, that we can control versus things that we cannot control, which are outcomes. And so outcomes are, like you said, maybe off in the future. Like, we want to keep that as kind of in front of us or keep it in mind. But if we focus too much on that, like you're saying, the performance or the money, then it can trip us up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's to do with having the right focus at the right time. So obviously, if you're in trading, you want to make money. It's not a bad thing to be having a profit target by any means. It's just that focusing on it at the right time is helpful. So maybe you set a monthly profit target, or maybe a weekly one, depending on how much that affects your own emotions and psychology. It's different for different people. And then at the end of the week, you review it, you see what went well, what didn't, or at the end of the month. But that is definitely an outcome goal, because sometimes there might be a month where you're doing everything right, but actually your setups aren't appearing in the market because of the market conditions. And so it wouldn't be right for you to be jumping in, trying to make things happen if the opportunities aren't presenting themselves. So maybe there's a month where you've done everything right from a process performance perspective, and you haven't made the money, that you want to. So if you're following appropriate goal setting, you'll be able to discern that you did everything right, everything in your control, and the outcome, it's nothing to do with you, that the outcome didn't manifest the way that you wanted it. That's very different to having a profit target and focusing on that the whole time, even when you're in the middle of a trade, to the detriment of actually implementing your trading strategy, and letting that draw on your emotions and knock you off course, basically. So it's about the right focus at the right time.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting, because I just did a blog article on an interview with kind of a legendary trader named John Moulton from us. He I guess he was from Chicago, is where he got his start, trading bonds and things like that. But in the interview, he said that as a kind of in his early days, he would track his progress on a daily basis. He would take the train home. And so he had like a 45-minute ride on the train to get home, and he would, every trade that he made, he would kind of go through, see what his P&L was for that day. And then eventually got to the point where it didn't really matter as much to him. And then, like, I guess I'm trying to figure out how this would play into how you train traders to think more about process and performance with outcome off in the distance, because he said that eventually he got to where he didn't even check his statements for like months. And granted, he got started like in the 70s. So, for somebody that's got a nice trading platform up, you've got access to your running P&L, just like, going on all the time. Back then, as a floor trader, you really didn't know what your P&L was. I mean, you're just flying around like, yeah, I'll take this, I'll sell that, whatever. So I'm sure it was easier, but, it's still, he could kind of download that kind of stuff or print it off, whatever it was, and check it on a daily basis if he wanted to. But eventually, and in the blog post I just wrote, there was something really profound about what he said. And that was that it got to the point where I realized that my trading was getting better if I divorced myself from the money. So it was kind of like what is that kind of like what you're saying? Like, if you divorce yourself, like, yes, you want an outcome. Yes, I want to be a successful trader. Yes, I want to quit my job. Yes, all these things way off out there. But unless I somehow figure out a way to divorce myself from the outcome and focus more on the process, then I'm not going to be a successful trader. Is that a true statement?
I think I never want to say anyone's not going to be a successful trader, but if we're talking about the mindset for optimal performance and for, really getting the best out of yourself, then yes, in any performance domain, sport, trading, anything else, focusing, I'm going to say process. I say process, but it's probably my Irishness. So I'm going to stick with process because that's easier. It's really that is going to give you the results that you want, ironically. So especially another thing with trading is that people can have different, like their money mindset, what I'll call money mindset. So their emotions and beliefs around money can also play into their trading performance. And that's at a very subconscious level. Mm-hmm. That's probably a whole other interview podcast in itself, to be honest, talking about money mindset. But the more people are quite emotionally invested in money, it's a topic that people feel strongly about, in lots of different ways. So all those emotions are being activated. And it's not just when you're looking at the P&L. So a real simple technique that people can take from this episode, if they want, is just to be hiding the P&L when you're actually trading. So a lot of people do that. It stops you from, in the heat of the trade, getting too focused on that. But it's about, take a sports example. This is because it's quite visual. If a soccer player is on a pitch and they are focused on the fact that they're 3-1 down and there's 10 minutes left to go in the match, is that going to be helpful to them trying to make up the scores in the next 10 minutes? Probably not. Like, what is the use of focusing on that when you're in the middle of a match? So an example of a process focus for that athlete would be they're focusing on making the next pass as accurate as possible, trying to get into the right space on the pitch, trying to motivate their teammates, whatever it is. That's a process focus. And if they can keep that up at a really high level, it's going to result in, hopefully, goals and winning the match. But it's just not useful at all to be focused on the outcome when you're in the middle of doing the thing. So it's the same with trading. There's so much to focus on. You have to be paying attention to different signals. You have to be, so if you're focused on the profit or the potential loss the whole time, it's going to actually change what you're doing in the moment. And therefore that will really undermine your performance.
Got it. Yeah. Well, that's cool. And what is it? I guess you have a certain kind of strategy that you use as far as developing process, right? I mean, you have, I think I remember you sharing at one time, and we do have some visuals here that we could use as far as just understanding like the structure. Should we take a look at that? And you want to take a look at maybe like the building blocks or?
Yeah, I might even just to take it a bit wider. So process focus is one of the aspects of building your mental edge, but there's lots of other components as well. So when I'm talking about the mental edge, which we're going to show on this visual now, it's actually just talking about all of the mental and emotional, psychological aspects of your trading, and how that's not just something nebulous that I'd really like to have a better mindset. That's a hard thing to actually practically work on. So when we're talking about the mental edge, or when I talk about it with clients, we're talking about a whole list of different factors and areas that you can work on in order to elevate your performance. So the visual might help explain that.
Okay. Yeah, let's check that out. Let me see if I can share the screen here. Let me know if you can see that.
Yep, I can see that fine here.
Cool. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what this is and how it can really improve or at least just provide a framework for how you work with traders and how it can help develop their mindset.
Sure. So just to set the context, I suppose, if you're trading and you know that your strategy is good and you know that you're technically proficient and you're still not getting results, it's likely that it's something in your psychology that is actually disrupting your performance. So that could be limiting beliefs. It could be that your emotions are getting the better of you, whatever. But performance psychology and the mental edge comes into play when you know what you should be doing and you're not doing it.
What's an example, if I may, like what's an example of a limiting belief that you've run into in the past?
Well, we get very deep here, and that is my way of working. I do work at quite a deep level with people. So honestly, I have worked with quite a number of traders and athletes, and you get to a limiting belief that actually is something like, I need to be perfect in order to be loved. That's deep. But how does that relate to your trading performance? If you have that belief, and often these subconscious beliefs are things that we developed as children and we bring them right with us through our lives, that would manifest in an inability to make mistakes. So you cannot make mistakes. And how would that look in your trading behavior? Probably revenge trading. So if you have a trade that goes against you, you probably, if you had held that belief, it would nearly be a threat to your sense of self to have a loss. So you would really go in and do everything you could to try and make up that loss, to try and prove that loss wrong.
Wow.
So
you dig deep with clients and try to find those limiting beliefs and uncover them.
Yeah, and it's actually interesting because for whatever reason, in the majority of my career, I've worked with a lot of like male athletes and quite A-type personality males in different performance domains. And you would think that stereotype potentially that people would be uncomfortable going to that level of depth. But what I found is when people are so motivated to improve their performance, they're willing to really look at those things that maybe wouldn't be relevant for them to look at in their day-to-day lives. Maybe they don't feel a need to dig that deep into their subconscious, but once they see the link between what's happening in their trading and what potentially is sitting in their subconscious, they're willing to work on it. And that's a really satisfying aspect of the work I do for me. You know, it's actually, it helps people even outside of training then, even though it's not therapy and it's not clinical psychology, it really helps people to dissolve blocks in their own psychology that are holding them back.
Wow. So, wow, that's interesting. And I guess like you were saying earlier, it could be anything like from beliefs about money or success or fear of success, fear of failure, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah, fear of success is actually a really interesting one, because a lot of people have it and they would never think, like, if they're motivated and they have these goals, they would never think that they'd be afraid to reach them. But that is often the case, again, for a whole host of other reasons that sit in your subconscious. But if someone's experiencing self-sabotage, like if they're actually taking actions in the market that are undermining their goals, that's self-sabotage. And sometimes the fear of success can be behind that. But obviously you can also have, sorry to cut across you there, just finish this point, but you know, you can have beliefs that aren't that level of depth that are also tripping you up in the market. So even if you believe that, I can never, say on a Thursday, I never seem to do well, you know, for whatever reason, like historically I don't do well on a Thursday, like you're starting to get into kind of biases, or there's lots of levels of beliefs that can trip you up, but often they go right down to the subconscious.
Got it. Yeah. And so what you just said there, it doesn't take much to tease those out. Is that the case? Because people are so motivated to figure out what's going on with them, or does it have to do you have to kind of tease these kind of biases and beliefs out? I think
that's a really, really good question. And I guess that's probably like what I love doing. And also that's probably why my approach is this way, because I find that really interesting to help people find their blocks. And so in working with someone else and working with a coach, it's easier to actually identify where those blocks are, because it's very hard for us just sitting in the mirror to actually think, all right, I'm doing this in the market and therefore I must have this belief, because we have our own blind spots. So typically it does take a bit of digging, and that's why when I do one-to-one coaching, I do it as an 8-week program, because it's not a quick fix by any means. And often if we touch on a theme, say if somebody's for whatever reason in their childhood, they were trying to prove themselves, you know, it takes a few sessions, and we do go to that level of depth, but we don't rush it either. You know, we only get there when someone's ready to do it. So I find that in a couple of sessions, it usually is possible to do that for sure, as long as the person is willing to go there. That's the key part. Yeah.
So then would you say that is the precursor to what we're looking at now? Like first you kind of tease out those inhibitions, those limiting factors, and then put together some kind of a personalized building blocks of the mental edge, or what is it we're looking at here?
So it's definitely part of it. What we're looking at here is just looking at not all of them. This is just a snapshot. There's many more. But the types of things that you would work on when you're working on your mental edge, that would all, if you improve them all by 1%, you know, would add up to you improving your trading performance. So these are things like from as deep as working on, say, seeking only internal validation. So that relates to if their ego is in the market, if they're trading for ego reasons, then that's not going to help their performance. So we try and flip that and help them to give themselves validation and not seek it externally. So that would be a deep aspect. But then we also have simple techniques like a daily review, having a really effective way of reviewing your trades and what was going on for you from a psychology perspective. That's very practical. Expecting success. So actually really building that belief and confidence in your goal and your ability to reach it. Knowing your trading why. So it's actually really important for motivation to understand why you're actually trading. So you might have a target of, you know, I want to be a millionaire, but what do you actually want to do with that money? How is that going to elevate your life? Is it that you want to buy sports cars? Perfect if it is. Is it that you want to support your family? It might be a mix of both, but really articulating that is really important to sustain your motivation. So these are all aspects of building blocks of the mental edge, and they range from deep to surface or more practical. My process is to check with people at the start, what are your goals? We set the context. Where do you want to get to? Then the next layer is what's stopping you. So that's probably getting into the subconscious stuff, or the deeper aspect. Then we look at, well, what could you be introducing from a practical strategy perspective to actually shift those beliefs or to, resolve that stuff. And then we look at actually leveling up your performance. So not just fixing what's going wrong, but what can we introduce that would give you more structure to your week? What techniques could you use that will really enhance your trading, build your confidence? So you're looking at taking it from neutral to even higher. So things like using visualization, mental rehearsal, affirmations, they all build your confidence, your belief, and also build your performance. And then it's about really having good habits so that I think we were talking about this previously about, training well and then having good sleep and really taking a performance lifestyle approach so that you're actually setting yourself up to be successful in trading, even when you're not trading, when you're doing other things, so social life is important, downtime is important, sleep, hydration, really making sure that you've taken care of absolutely every factor that's going to impact your performance. So that's the journey that people go through in the way that I do coaching, at least.
Got it. And so this is, like you said, it's not all encompassing here. Like you've got other aspects that you take a look at with regard to the mental edge, but for all intents and purposes, you're basically using this as kind of a blueprint for like running through and maybe like doing an audit of the traders, how they're doing in each one of these categories. I guess some practical advice to traders who might be looking at this diagram here and thinking, I need to work on that. Is that what you would say?
So this particular visual is just to give people a flavor of how many practical things you can work on to improve your mindset and your emotions and your psychology and trading. So just to give you a sense that it's not nebulous. It's not just about, I need to think more positively. It's literally all of these things. So, but the next visual is exactly what you're talking about. So it's a structured exercise that I always start with people with. It's a performance profile, and it's actually something that came from sport. So it started in sports psychology, and sports psychologists use it with athletes to help them get a sense of exactly that. Where are they going well? What's important for their performance, etc. Well, I explain it in terms of trading. So this is an exercise that people go through to map out every single factor or variable that impacts their trading performance. And often through going through this exercise, people realize that so many things impact their trading performance that they weren't aware of. So what we do is we have these headings, but it's really just to help people think through all the different factors. So physical, mental, technical, skill, tactical, and lifestyle. So then we ask people to think of under each heading all of the different factors that impact their trading performance. And really important that this is a completely personal exercise. So you could have two traders who have the exact same strategy who have different performance profiles. Like they wouldn't look the same because it's what they feel is important for the trading performance. I'm not sitting there saying you should have all these things in these columns. Same with an athlete. You could have two people in a number 10 position in rugby and they might have different looking performance profiles. So on the physical side of things, you're talking about things that people do to keep themselves well, to make themselves feel good. So for someone that might be the gym 5 times a week, maybe they're, that really makes them feel energized and it de-stresses them, whatever. Maybe doing yoga, could just be time outside every day. And this isn't to say that you need to have the body and fitness of an athlete to do well in trading. It's not that. It's just that having physical exercise definitely helps your mind frame, helps your focus, etc. So whatever that looks like for you. And then in the mental column, we're talking about very specific psychology factors related to your trading. So there's, again, someone could do a performance profile and actually have even more factors than each of these columns. Then you have technical skills. So obviously it's not all about psychology. You really need to be technically skilled, good proficiency in that side of things. So you map out all of the different things you need to be good at in order to hit your peak trading performance. Tactical refers to more strategic things, same idea. And then lifestyle, so really taking it to the level of your hydration impacts your trading performance. If you go out, drinking all weekend and you're partying, and then you get to a Monday morning and you're hungover, for sure, you're not going to be trading at your best, which is not to say that, there's no time for social life or any of that. It's just to be really aware of how it impacts things. Your relationships with people, having work-life balance, all of those aspects go into the melting pot of your trading performance. So what isn't up here, but would be the next step in this, is that people first map out what impacts performance. Not are they good at it or bad at it, they just map out what's important. Then the next step is to rate themselves out of 10 on absolutely everything.
Yeah.
And then that gives them a sense of how they're doing at any point in time, where are their strengths, what are the places they need to work on, and then that can inform your goal setting. So it all maps together, but this is definitely the first place to start.
Yeah, well, it's fascinating to me because to me, performance is such an abstract concept, and I've never really thought about it in this way. But again, I go back to what I said earlier, that it appears like your process in coaching gives like a structure, like something tangible almost to like progress, maybe like performance progress, and like this profile. Like it gives me something I can see, because I'm very visual. Like I need to be able to see like A, B, C, D. And, when you think about mindset, and again, it's so important to trading, and everybody says, trading's 90% mindset, right? I've heard that so many times that, if I had a nickel every time I heard it, I wouldn't need to trade. But the problem to me with that is that nobody really structures it. Like there's no structure to it. There's no, like, what does that mean? Like, well, you need to be more disciplined. Like, oh, okay. Well, what is that? I need to make my bed in the morning. Like, like how do I like quantify what a performance profile looks like? Like, how do I get from point A of maybe lack of discipline to point B of more disciplined? And what am I going to traverse along the way? Like what issues, what psychological issues, what technical, what lifestyle, all that kind of stuff. And so to me, this is, when we first met, that's why I was fascinated by your approach, because it actually laid a framework for how to get from point A to point B. Because I don't think a lot of traders, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I deal with a lot of traders and interact with a lot of traders on a daily basis. And there's a lot of unknowns. There's so many unknowns, and I did a recent interview with Dr. Steenbarger, and it was all about like that, like that expectation, and how do we mitigate stress and lack of education, things like that came into that conversation. But to me, like the unknown, if we can take out the mystery of the unknown by applying some kind of framework here, some kind of structure to it, then to me that is a game changer in the industry, in not only like in the education of the industry, but like you're doing, like the performance. Like nobody that I know of has any kind of like framework for the mental side of the game, except for just read some books, suffer through losses, you'll learn, that sort of thing. A caveat here, a nice cliche there, a pat on the back. This really dives deep.
I think, yeah, that's what I'm hoping. Like that's my mission. I want to bring this approach to the trading sector. And I think that exactly what you're saying, it's not that there isn't good advice out there, or, but it's very hard to pull it all together into a very structured framework. So, and also there's a lot of people who are traders who are bringing in the psychology side of things, which is brilliant. And it's definitely helpful. But even if you want to go to the real depths of getting the most out of the psychology side of things, then it's helpful to really just focus on the psychology aspect. And I think that's why I'm very clear that I'm not crossing into teaching people about technical aspects of trading. That is not my area of expertise, but I do know people very, very well and how they operate and how they behave and, you know, what's behind their behaviors. So I think, yeah, I want to bring that structured approach, and it isn't for everybody because it is quite intense and detailed. So I'm really pedantic about having detail and giving people things that they can work on. So this isn't, if someone just wants to read a book on psychology and feel that that's going to improve their trading performance 100%, it's probably not. You really need to be disciplined, to put in the work, to practice these strategies, you know, day after day. So for example, I'll use the example of affirmations. So that's like positive self-talk. People write statements, positive statements that they want to become true. And they can turn that into a script. I take it to the really nth degree with people to get them to record those statements in their own voice. And then they have an audio recording that might be saying things like, you know, I have utter belief in myself and my trading ability. I only take my A+ setups, etc. That's a very practical technique, but if you just do that and you listen to it once, you're not going to get results. But if you make that part of your trading routine and you listen to that every day, then you're going to get results, and it's going to get more effective over time. So I think if people really genuinely want to benefit from working on the psychology side of their trading, they need to be prepared to put in the work and to consider it as part of their trading performance, you know, from now on, as opposed to just thinking of it as something to dip into that will add to the technical side of things that they're doing. They need to be given equal weight. So in the same way that you wouldn't just dip in and out of learning about the technical aspects of trading, it wouldn't bring you that far. You know, you probably, even when you get very good at your strategy, you're probably looking to take it to the next degree. So yeah, this approach takes people from the point of starting out to figuring out what's important for them to work on. And really crucially, you can't work on everything at once. It's not possible. So it's about finding the low-hanging fruit and then finding the core thing that if you improve that by even, you know, 10%, that's going to make a big difference straight away to your performance. So you systematically work on different parts of your psychology rather than just trying to scattergun approach, do everything, and then maybe stop paying attention to it after a week.
Got it. Yeah. And now you've got one more visual here, but I was wondering, like, I wanted to kind of unpack how you analyze things. So going back to the thought that performance is somewhat abstract, you know, like because you've got emotions involved in that. Is there any kind of like review or like how do you analyze and have someone track their progress?
Yeah, and I know what you're saying, but to me, I guess performance is concrete, and that's really what I start with, because in the way that I conceptualize it. So when I talk about performance, I mean about your P&L. Are you hitting your profit targets? Performance is, did you get to leave your job and actually, you know, are you making enough money to be trading full time? To me, that is performance. Mm-hmm. And then we do a lot of work to pull back from that and turn it into actions that you can take on a daily basis to reach that. But every time I say performance, that's what I mean. So for an athlete, performance is winning the championship, etc. But then so how I would work with people is we first figure out what's important to them. Then we figure out where's the first place to start. And then it's kind of an art. So there are, you know, scientifically proven strategies that help you to increase your confidence, increase your focus, etc. So the science is all there, but you can't just take the science and apply it to everyone in the same way because people are different. So it's really about understanding how to use that information, but in a way that makes sense to the person and that really works with their personality. And so, for example, you could use affirmations or visualization to improve your confidence. If somebody isn't visual, which happens, so some people don't have a capacity to form mental images very well. If I was forcing them to use visualization, it wouldn't work. It's not the way the brain is wired. So it's really important to understand, you know, to say these are the ways we can work on things, but what's going to work for you. So it's definitely, for each person, it can be slightly different. So even in my coaching, I don't set out, in my one-to-one coaching, you know, we don't go, right, you're doing this in the first session and this in the second, we let it evolve. And by the end of it, we have metrics to measure ourselves against. So for example, it could be that by the end of the coaching, you should be hitting 100% of the trades you're taking are A setup. It could be that you've improved your confidence to at least an 8 out of 10. We set metrics relevant to the person at the start, and then we make sure that we keep them in mind the whole way along.
Interesting. How permanent would you say these tactics that you use are? Like, I'm going to play the devil's advocate here, and let's just say I'm going to kind of poo-poo on the whole self-help thing, like affirmations. Like if I'm saying these things over and over, and how long does it take to really set in? And is there still a possibility of regression?
So I'm a very big fan of affirmations, so I'm probably biased on this one, but I know what you're saying. And so I will answer it truthfully. To me, the art in affirmations, so there's one piece of it is that people mightn't feel comfortable with it, fine. But if you knew that was going to improve your profits, if you did it for 6 weeks, like if you knew for sure, you probably would get over your discomfort pretty quickly. So that's one aspect. People are uncomfortable with it sometimes, or hearing their own voice or whatever. However, and there are affirmations out there on the internet. If you just arbitrarily say, I feel good about myself all the time, fine, that might help you. But if it's not targeting the issue that's at the core, then it's not going to be as effective. So a huge part of using affirmations for me is actually understanding the core of the issue. So for the trader that we spoke about earlier, who might have a core belief of, I need to be perfect in order to be loved. If you can strip away all the layers and get to that core belief and then write affirmations that target that belief, you'll see huge changes. I think sometimes people sort of take the Band-Aid approach and they think, oh, positive self-talk, I just have to tell myself I'm great all the time and that'll change things. And it doesn't, but it's because they haven't done the work to actually get to the depth before they write the affirmations. So if you do it that way, in my experience, working with clients, that's the single most transformative strategy that I've used. I think I've never had, and sounds like a big claim, but I've never had a person who affirmations hasn't worked for and they haven't noticed shifts in other areas of their life as well. Not that we're aiming to do it in other areas of their life, but it's after about 2 weeks of listening every single day. If you stick with it, you should start noticing a shift in your thinking or in your behaviors. And then if you do it, for 6 weeks, you really should be seeing tangible results.
And the science shows that this is long lasting.
So that would be, positive. The science that I'm drawing on for that is positive self-talk in sport. So, I am backing it up. I understand that affirmations can sometimes be used in a more alternative way. But what I'm talking about is positive self-talk. And there's countless studies in sport and performance psychology that show that using those can improve people's, say, basketball free throw shots, boost their confidence, boost their motivation, etc. So that is fully backed up. Same with visualization, which also can sound airy-fairy. There's research since the 1940s that backs that up.
Well, it makes sense, to work out this part of your, I don't know what your psychology, you think about working out for a sport, whether it's rugby or basketball, you got to lift weights, you got to run, you got to do all these things. And to me, I think it's clearer when you see the negative side of things and how it works long term. Because you think about like the whole self-sabotage, the negative self-talk, and I've experienced that in my own life. I've seen it, I've witnessed it in other people's lives, that that constant negativity, typically it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy in some ways. And so to me, I think it's a brilliant idea to combat that with going the other direction with positivity. And over time that builds on itself, because, we are creatures of habit, and habituation as a concept is very important to the process of trading. in itself. I mean, we're trying to build good habits. I mean, the market itself is pattern based mostly. And so that spatial memory recognition should apply to not only your technical skills, but your mental well-being, your psychology, and that sort of thing. So to me, it makes sense that, positive affirmations, whatever it is, it seems kind of cheesy, and I haven't done it yet, but I'm kind of looking forward to trying it. But I can see where, hearing my own voice back, I'm like, who is that guy?
No, totally. And I completely appreciate that view. And I'm conscious that I'm sure there's half the people listening have gone, oh, positive self-talk affirmations.
Yeah.
I've switched off, but honestly, it gets results. And
Yeah.
I think when people are super motivated, they'll try anything. And that's key, is trying things and then figuring out what works for you. So even with the affirmations, it becomes a skill. So everything that I would work with clients on, they then become skills in their toolkit that they can use to decode their own mental and emotional trading challenges down the line. So if you understand how to get to the bottom of your core beliefs, write an affirmation script to dissolve them or turn them around, then you might use one script for a couple of weeks, whatever, and it does its job. It transforms whatever you need it to transform. But you now have that strategy in your toolkit that you can then write another one down the line if something else crops up. So it's about really building up this, skill set, where people have the tools that they can then, and the self-awareness that they can decode their own challenges in the future. It's not about always having to work with a performance psychologist to do it for you. Not at all. It's about empowering people to have this whole new way of approaching things. And like you say, it's about training your mind like a muscle. If you use all these things, it'll get stronger, and you can shift from having a negative mindset to a positive one.
What other tools do you like to use? And I mean, I don't want to give away all of your secrets if you don't want to, but I mean, you're welcome to give them all away if you'd like. But
no, I'll hold some back.
I'm just teasing. Yeah. So, for example, I've read some prop firm traders like to use a ring that like tracks their oxygen level to, like, in the moment, let them know if they're stressed, if they've, if they haven't had enough sleep. Dr. Steenbarger talks about like taking your temperature, like where's my frustration level, like having a piece of paper down there, like 1 to 10 frustration. Oh gosh, I'm at 9. My confidence on this trade is 2. I need to get out. I need to take a break. I need to go meditate, something like that. What besides affirmations do you like to use?
So I think that's a really good point. I guess I'm kind of old school in that I feel like, say, taking your oxygen, all of that, it's helpful, but at the level, often people are not doing even the basics in as optimal a way as they could. So it's great to get to that level, but I'd say there's a whole lot of steps to get to before that's going to be the most impactful thing that you're doing. Not to, it's a good strategy, but when you're talking about people's psychology, there's a lot of easy wins if you start shifting things. So examples of strategies I use, and sometimes we create them for the persons, we'll base them on science, but we'll tailor something and come up with something new for the person. So but yeah, so affirmations, goal setting, progressive muscle relaxation, so using relaxation audios, guided visualization, which again sounds airy fairy, but so powerful. So I'll actually take people through visualizations where a lot of traders stay in their left brain and their kind of analytical side a lot, and they could actually really aid their performance by tapping more into their creativity, into their right brain. So we might do a visualization to sort of help that. And that helps with flow. People have heard the flow state. Even things like gratitude diaries can help, but then quite practical things like exactly what you were saying, Dr. Steenbarger talks about you taking your thermometer. We'll create an individualized version of that for people. So depending on what's relevant for them, even as far as helping people with sleep. So really, if you think of performance like a pyramid, at the bottom are the fundamental things like your diet, your nutrition, hydration, sleep. So if somebody comes to me and they want to work on confidence, but they're only sleeping 4 hours a night, that we start with sleep, because you absolutely have to have sleep. You're going to get the biggest wins there. So helping people to have better sleep routines, it's kind of endless, but it's all practical things that you actually implement and should see changes from.
Got it. Yeah. So it sounds to me like you're kind of building, like I keep going back to like structure, but it's almost like a base from, where you can begin awareness of like all these things, whether it's sleep, whether it's routine, whether it's breathing, whether it's diet and exercise, sticking to your strategy. And then, during that process, like over time, traders should become more aware of what's affecting them. And then confidence builds through the process of implementing specific strategies like affirmations or meditation or, whatever it was, progressive relaxation and things like that. You had one more slide. I'm wondering if that ties into this with like some kind of like schedule, like routine.
Yeah, so that was just, I'll obviously show it in a minute and I'll talk through it, but it's to show that the idea behind it is that this becomes part of your routine. So the one that you'll see, it's not like somebody's doing 10 million different things, but they've chosen to work on a few key things and they've kind of wired them into their week. So they become things that are measurable, that are tracked, and therefore they get attention paid to them. So say hydration, really important for your cognitive focus. So that person has set a goal to drink more than 2 liters of water a day. So if it gets written down and ticked off, it's actually, science says that it is more effective in building your confidence, in improving your performance, if you actually write goals down and tick them off. So it might seem simple and a bit labor intensive to write down a goal to drink water every day. But actually the science says that if that's important to you and you write it down and you track it every day, that it's going to give you better results to do that. So they've got the fundamentals there, goals around hydration, diet, sleep. And important to note that diet doesn't mean, Olympic athlete nutrition plan by any means. So then they have their affirmations. They do visualization. So you're asking about strategies, and that's another absolute cornerstone of performance psychology. So visualization or mental rehearsal is probably something that people do anyway, and they might not even be aware that they do it. So maybe rehearsing your strategy, what it's going to look like when the setup appears, you might be visualizing that in your head. That's, visualization, but we just make it that bit more effective. But that one actually has been proven to set down new neural pathways in the brain. So you can actually, it's as if you have experienced it before when you see it. So if somebody's using visualization to improve confidence or to perfect a skill in sports, your brain actually treats it as if you're already doing it. So it creates structural changes in your brain. So that's, really powerful one. They have the review and planning, they're disciplined about trading times, and then mapping in the goals that we spoke about. So say this person, the A+ setups. So they would be tracking every day if they've met their goal of taking at least 90% of all the setups, the A+ setups that they've seen. And that's the kind of thing that's better than focusing. It's better to focus on that than a P&L goal every day. Of course, you can have your P&L goal on a different time frame, and then say trade management might be something that they're working on too. So it's just to show that you work on lots of things, you map them into your week so that they get done and focused on, but you're not trying to work on everything at once. And you might only pick 2 key goals from a performance goal perspective to focus on at any one time. And that would be a pretty solid mental training plan if somebody was doing all of those things.
How do you recommend that, or how do you, do you provide anything, or should traders like track this? And I'm just trying to think of like maybe traders who are not ready for individual coaching right now. Like, what are some practical things that somebody listening to this could do if they're looking at this and thinking like, I could maybe take some steps myself right now, just to try to do better. Like, how do you track that 90% of all A+ setups were taken? Like, should that be done through some kind of charting analytics software like chartlog.com or TraderView or something like that? Or is it something that we just need to write this down, kind of keep track of it, or we're making notes on a diary?
So I would say to get to that goal with someone, we'll have worked through the technical side of things. Like they'll have explained to me how that works, whatever, and then we'll have turned it into a much more simple goal that they just track every day. So it's not, they will also be tracking, say through TraderView, they'll have all their stats and their trades available to them. So I'm not discounting that is tracked, but just from the psychology perspective, we simplify it and then track it this way. But so there's a bit of work to be done before someone gets to a goal like that. But the first thing I would say to anybody is just building self-awareness. So especially if somebody's experiencing those challenges where they know what they should be doing and they just find that they're not doing it. So they're revenge trading, fear of missing out, afraid to put on risk to get into a trade, whatever it is, even just noting down every time that happens, 3 bullet points as to what you were feeling, what you were thinking, and why it happened is a brilliant place to start. Because really half the battle with all of this is understanding yourself and understanding what's going on, what's behind challenges, so that you can then start shifting it. So I think building self-awareness by just tracking more of your emotions and your thoughts is a really good place to start. And then I'm happy to share, I have an effective goal setting crib sheet that I'm happy to share with people. It's just a short one. So it might give people a bit more information to help them structure their own goal setting. So if you want to share that, that's fine.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, no, we'll put that in the information for the video for sure. Cool. So I think we're coming up pretty close to time here, and I just wanted to just playing devil's advocate here, like who does this not work for?
That's such a good question. I would say performance psychology as a discipline is relevant to everybody. However, if somebody is not ready to go into that part of their psyche, then they're going to be closed off to it, and it might not be right for them at this time. Fair enough. Or they might be able to just cherry pick a few things that they are comfortable with and use them, and that's perfect. In terms of my coaching, because I'm not a trader, I would say to people that they have to have a certain level of technical proficiency to know that their strategy works and that, that the technical side of things is good before I would work with them, because it needs to be that the challenge, is on the mental side of things at that point that's tripping them up. So that's my personal coaching with people in trading. And I guess also you have to find the right person for you. So if you're going to work with a performance psychologist, you need to find someone whose approach resonates with you. And that is really important. So I'll be super upfront when I'm talking to people. If they're interested in coaching, I'll explain how I work. I go to the core. We take time to actually understand things before we jump in with strategies that might be too slow or too intense for someone. And then I'm not the right person to work with. So I think at the lighter level, cherry pick what feels good for you. And if you're ready for the whole thing, by all means, start with the process that we were discussing today. And if you are going to work with a performance coach, a performance psychologist, then really kind of do some research as to what that person's approach is like, and if it resonates with you, and if you feel like you can trust the person and open up to them, and you like the way that they work. That's very much part of the efficacy of the coaching, is that connection is right. So for me, I also have a few criteria that I screen out people. So if people aren't willing to put in the work, if they think it's a quick fix or they expect me to do the work for them, that's not what this is about. And people, for me, another key criteria is that people are willing to be honest with themselves and me, because if they're not, we're both wasting our time. But they're my personal kind of criteria for coaching. But I think, it's about finding what works for you.
Good stuff. Yeah, good stuff. Anything else that you'd like to add that maybe we haven't covered today?
I think it could probably be a whole episode in itself, but I just think that when we're talking about performance, it goes hand in hand with dealing with pressure. And it's really interesting to understand how you deal with pressure and how that impacts your trading. So I think that's something that might be worth people, when we were talking about making little bullet points of what's happening for you, really try and understand what's your performance like when you don't feel under pressure and how it changes when you are under pressure. And then that will give you an insight into the areas to start working on. Or even maybe the first thing is to actually try and pull down your pressure levels. Great
stuff. Yeah. And how can any viewers, if they want to check out your stuff, check out your services, things like that, how can we get in touch with you?
Sure. So I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, on Twitter as well. I might just be easier to drop the links in, but my website is credeperformance.com. So CREDE performance.com. And I'm very happy if anyone's, even considering thinking about coaching, happy to have a chat with people and see where they're at, see if the approach is good for them, before they're signing up to anything. But I post a lot of kind of tips and techniques and stuff on Instagram and LinkedIn primarily, on Twitter not as often, but they're there as well. So if people just want to follow that and take some tips, they're more than welcome to. And I'll be launching a course as well in November that is kind of the bones of this. It's really taking people through that process, but without the intensity of full-on one-to-one coaching. So there'll be an element of online modules and an element of one-to-one coaching, but just not as intense as the coaching that I was describing to you earlier. So if people are interested in that, watch that space or get in touch and I'd be happy to send on information.
Well, will that be more like you said group coaching, or what is it?
So it'll actually be a hybrid of group coaching, one-to-one, and online learning at your own pace. So there'll be videos that will talk people through these different things that we've been talking about in a lot more depth, and it'll be a structured journey. Then there'll be group coaching where people can ask questions and, kind of depending on where they're at in the journey, and also some element of one-to-one to help people just really personalize, say, the goal setting or unlocking those limiting beliefs, etc., to speed up that process as well.
Awesome. Well, good luck with that.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. So we'll look forward to having you back again sometime.
Awesome. Me too.
All right. Take care, Créde.
You too.